Hi, welcome to EHO Recap. My name is Alex and I'm the Bosquen coordinator. So welcome to the EHO Recap for marketing. Just a small rundown, we are a student-run organization. We post free content during midterms and finals for students by students. We give a short presentation and answer any of your questions at the end of the call. We post content exclusively on our website at ehrecap.tk. If you forget the link, don't worry, you can always log into our Instagram, ehl.recap. We have reminders on future recap sessions and anything else you need to know. I will send both of these links in the group chat. We aren't affiliated with EHL, so don't keep us accountable if you fail. However, we have worked with professors and students who have taken this class before to put up this material and made sure that it is up to proper standards. Timo, it's all yours.
A recap presentation about marketing, the foundation of marketing, hospitality, more exactly. And I also want just to inform you, it's just a recap since we have to cover one whole semester with a lot of theory and terms. I will just go over my slides where you can actually read most definitions and everything, but still listen to what I'm telling you, because it's probably not exactly what's on the slide. There you find definitions. However, I will keep it short that we can make it through time. Still, it's so much, but we can do it, I guess. So I would just share my screen with you so that you can see it. Can you see the presentation? Well, the slides? Perfect. Okay, these slides will be, as well as Alex said, on the recap website that you can look at it in peace and at which time you want. So therefore, without further ado, we'll start with chapter 1. About your questions, I would like you to address them always during the chapters that we have. I will always have chapters for each topic. And then at the end of the chapter, I will look into the chat and answer your question. So let's move on. So chapter 1, we actually already heard it 100 times that marketing is not just advertising, but so much more. The core of marketing is actually creating and maintaining good relationship with customers. But how do we create these relationships? Well, for this, we have the marketing process. It is quite a simple process, but very crucial for the basic understanding and probably even the crucial understanding of the marketing process is quite important. And I would recommend you to memorize the different steps. Although we will have everything at our demand, and because it's open book, you can still, it would be beneficial if you would learn it by heart, because it's quite simple. And in order to simplify the memorizing, I noted for each step keywords that will describe each step. As for the first time, it's customer in the center, because it's understanding the marketplace and the customer needs and wants. Secondly, we have strategy, because it's about the strategy. Thirdly, tools. Fourth, relationship. And fifth, profit, as you can see on the slides. So I think it's quite simple. So let's move on to another key part of marketing, which is understanding the needs, wants, and demand. On the left side of the presentation, you can see the definitions of the 3 points with what they contain. And for better understanding, I will just go over it briefly. Our needs are what we actually need to live a livable life, if you can say it like that. They are essential and have to be satisfied first. But also there are needs that have to be satisfied before others and are even necessary for survival. The hierarchy of these needs you can see on the right side, which is the pyramid of needs, the Maslow's hierarchy of needs actually. And I would recommend you also to know them by heart. It's not very difficult, but it's always helpful to know them. Continuing with the wants, which are our needs. combined actually with the culture and our personality. And then we move on to the actual demand. However, what will actually create the market? Because our demand is actually our wants with our buyer power. So it is actually what we want, and what we want that we can afford. So I guess these 3 points are quite clear, and so we can move on into another basic, namely the design of the marketing strategy and the marketing concept. So here you see marketing concepts which are very common to use, and concepts that we always encounter when we have to design a marketing strategy. We have 5 different concepts, namely the production concept, which mainly ask what can we easily make. Then we have the product concept, is what can we make that is special. Then the selling concept, which is what can we convince people to buy. The actual marketing concept, which is a concept that our industry, the hospitality industry, mostly focus on. Because this concept really surrounds us just about the need, and hospitality is all about just finding the needs and satisfy them in the best way possible. But also the 5th marketing concept of the social marketing, societal marketing concept, is what can we make that people like us, is also very crucial for the hospitality industry. However, we are still more in marketing concept. Therefore, remember those 5 concepts, and remember the marketing concept is crucial for hospitality. So actually, this was this first chapter of marketing basics. I guess everything's clear so far. I didn't see any questions in the chat. So we can move forward to chapter 2, which is about consumer behavior. So what it's about. So consumer behavior is actually how people make decisions about what they buy. And all these decisions happen on the consumer market, which are all the potential buyers which purchase the product for personal use. Something to remember here is that a customer is not the same as a consumer. And here we actually only will look at consumer. Again, on the slide, you will see the definitions. So I think that's quite clear. So let's move on to the model of consumer behavior. So the simple model of consumer behavior, as you can see, consists of 3 different parts that illustrate the buying process from the first box of the stimuli over to the buyer behavior till the final response. I guess the first and the last box are quite clear, because the first box is just the stimuli created from the marketer or the person itself, as for example hunger, which is a stimuli that stimulates us to go and get some food. And the last box just concerns the response that the marketer then can analyze. However, the most important part in this model would be the middle box, because it's what we cannot influence. Not directly influence. This part is only about the buyer as a person and his character. We will have a look at them now. So there are 4 major characteristics that influence one's buying behavior, which are cultural, social, personal, and psychological. But the main thing to add here is what marketers can take out of this. Marketers should focus on shifts in either of these characteristics or changes in any of them, because they can create rather big opportunities, but as well threats. On the following slides, you will see all the definitions of each trait, and I guess we won't go over each of them since it would take very much time, and I guess also they're quite clear. So if you have any question about the traits, you can raise your voice now or just type in the text, otherwise I will continue. Okay, I guess there's not much to ask here. So then we move forward to the 4 different buying behavior decision behaviors. These 4 different behaviors are determined by 2 factors. One, a level of involvement, and the other is the difference between the brands. For once, we have the complex buying behavior. As for the complex buying behavior, there is high involvement, something that happens, for example, when the price is high and the product is rather complex. So the consumer needs to inform himself. It is also not an everyday purchase. Additionally, there are significant differences among brands. An example for complex buying behavior would be to buy a car, because it's very expensive and it takes a lot of consideration about different brands, though they can vary a lot. As for dissonance reducing buying behavior, the consumer is highly involved again, which is on the bottom left. It's again a high price, an infrequent and risky purchase. However, they see little difference among the brands. For example, it would be carpeting. Since they are highly involved in the buying process, they want to avoid post-purchase dissonance, or also another term for this would be after-sale discomfort or kind of a regret. And therefore, they will still evaluate their choice after the purchase. As for variety-seeking buy behavior on the top right, there's just low involvement, but a significant brand difference. With this buying behavior, brand switching is very common. However, it doesn't occur for the sake of dissatisfaction, rather than for variety seeking, as it tells the name already. Just that you can try some new stuff out. And then for the last one, it will be the habitual buying behavior, where consumers are not really involved. So they don't search extensively for information about the brands, and they evaluate brand characteristic and make weighty decisions about which brand to buy. Because they are not highly involved with the product, consumer may not evaluate their choice even after the purchase. So they are actually not really committed to the brand. And there are also brand switching can occur. So I guess this is also quite clear. Then let's move forward to the actual buying process. So now we know that influences the consumer decision, and so what influences the consumer decisions and what main behaviors there are. So we go over the actual process, which is a 5-step process. The first stage is the need of recognition, as you can see, and the second, the search for information. And the third one, which is the evaluation of alternative. But here you have to remember that between the second and third step is the ZVOT, or the zero moment of truth. It is very important because it is where the marketer, or actually marketing, has to work the hardest, because there the marketer has to be present for the consumer in order to for the consumer to find our brand, and then also we need to persuade him to buy our product. So remember, zero moment of truth between the second and third step. Then we have the fourth step, which is the purchase decision, and the fifth step, which is the post-purchase behavior. So I guess this is also quite clear and also not so difficult. Then we can move over to another process, which will be the adaptation process. It is a similar process to the buying process, which is determined by the customer behavior. It is the adaptation process, something that is also related to customer behavior, but here there is more a focus on new products and how a marketer can support the process of adaptation and not just buying. Every consumer goes differently through this process, and a marketer should help the customer pass this process, for example, by a good promotion. There are again 5 steps which will start with awareness, continue with interest, then the evaluation, a trial, and then the final adoption. If the marketer could convince the customer in a good way, he will adopt finally. And as I already said, a marketer can influence the adoption process and therefore also the rate of adoption. And in order to influence this rate of adoption, there are these criteria that you can see on the slides, which will be the relative advantage, the compatibility, complexity, divisibility, communicability, and social approval. And just something to remember when introducing a new product to the market, marketer should always target innovators. As you can see on the curve, on the picture, on the presentation, there you can see the different segments there or the different kind of people which are involved in the adoption process over time. And the first people that will adapt will be the innovators, and therefore promote for them and also target them in the beginning is the best thing to do to get a good adoption. So that was it for chapter 2, which was about buying behavior and adoption process. I hope there's no questions. I didn't see anything. So I guess we can move on to actually a really crucial part of marketing, which would be the corporate strategy and strategic planning. I'm already sorry for troubling with words because it's quite difficult to pronounce for a non-native speaker. So let's move on this central topic. So what is the corporate strategy? Well, the corporate strategy is the high strategic plan of the organization, which defines actually the corporate overall goals and direction, and the way it will be achieved through strategic management activities. It answers the question who we are, what we do, and where we want to go, and how we want to do that. Actually, in order to come up with a good strategy, there is a process the management has to go through, which is called strategic planning, which is actually consists of 5 steps, as you can see on the picture. This planning is mostly on just the corporate level, but also has a connection to the other levels, namely the business unit and the market level. So, and as we go through the steps now. So the strategic planning actually starts with defining a mission and the mission statement. A mission statement is a brief description of an entity's purpose. It answers the question, why does our business exist and what it wants to accomplish in the larger environment. The mission statement articulates the company's purpose, both for those in the organization and for the public, and also includes 5 core elements. So just remember something very crucial as well for the mission statement. It is that it's always customer and market oriented. On the presentation, you will find 2 actually quite good mission statements that aren't just talking about the product, but also mostly just tells what the customer will then finally benefit from. So normally the mission statement should be market oriented and defined in terms that satisfy the basic needs of customers. They should actually be meaningful and specific yet motivating. So as you can see in the different examples that you see on the slides. So next step is setting goals and objectives and defining where we want to go and what we want to achieve. But remember that objectives is more strategic and better formulated than actually goals. And objectives are actually considered as collection of different goals. So it's always better to formulate objectives than just goals, since they are actually quite more understandable and better to follow. And just always remember the difference of the two. So after we have done that, we go further to the third step, which is defining our SBUs and therefore also defining our business portfolio. So SBUs are strategic business units, which are key businesses within a company. As for example, the company of Nestle, which we all know, has different SBUs. For example, L'Oréal, Mövenpick, or Gaillet. And yes. Somebody's unmuted, I guess. There a question? I don't think so. Okay. These SBUs have actually unique characteristics, which you will see on the next slide, actually, because they are very crucial when designing the business portfolio. The analyzing consists actually of 3 different steps, as you can see on the PowerPoint, which is first identifying your SBUs, then assess their attractiveness, and finally decide to either support or dump them. This analysis is crucial and tells us the current situation and how to move forward. Help to analyze the SBUs is the Boston Consulting Matrix, which you can see on the left side of the PowerPoint. They can help determine the nature of the SBUs and also help us how to move forward with them. The SBUs can either be a star, a question mark, a cash cow, or a dog. I won't go really into further detail what each of these different categories are, but if there are any questions, you can of course ask them in the chat, and if you want more details, you can just tell me. But I would move on because it would take so much time. Then another very good tool is the ends of matrix, and you can see on the right side. However, it concerns not just only the SBUs and to create the profit, it actually is for the overall strategy of the company very important. And also something that I know is that these 2 matrices will be very important for your final. Therefore, I would really encourage you to go and study them in more detail, especially the ends of matrix, because I think also your teacher would have told you 1,000 times what it is, and you had to do many different exercises of it. Therefore, I would really encourage you to go further and study deeply the ends of matrix, because we don't have time to go so much into detail. Therefore, I would move further on, but if there are questions, let me know. So let's move on. So for the main characteristic of the SBUs, you can as well see them on the slides, and they are also crucial to remember because they are very important for designing the business portfolio, because these characteristics will really help us to understand the 2 hypotheses that we look at right on the next slide. So designing the SBUs, and where do you do the decisions of the SBUs, and also actually the whole design of the business portfolio. So since we know that SBUs are fully independent and the decisions can take place at actually 2 different levels, we have also 2 different hypotheses. You can decide either at product level, which is closer to the consumer, or you can also decide at brand level. However, where you put the division should be strategical. Both ways, well, both hypotheses, as you can see on the slides, have their usefulness. As for the first hypothesis, therefore, you make the division at product level. This is very practical when there is a strong local competition, and therefore the different strategies from marketing, competition, etc. can be adapted to each situation. If one follows the second hypothesis, everything is determined at brand level. This is also very practical, especially when you want a uniform structure for the whole business and every SBU. I hope you understand these two hypotheses. If not, let me know and I will go back to them ASAP. So, I will now have a short summary. So, these are all the steps involved in the strategic planning that we just mentioned on corporate level. But now we move forward to the last step, which will mostly concern the business level, where all the functional strategies are defined, such as the marketing strategy. And here you have a short summary what we just did, just that you remember, because it's very a crucial chapter. I will let you read it, I guess, at home, or while you're at home, or when you have time. And I would just move on to the marketing strategy. So, over to the marketing strategy. It is actually a strategy on business level that defines how to engage with customers and create long-lasting relationships and, of course, deliver value. The main goal of marketers are to develop a custom value-driven marketing strategy, which starts with these 4 main points, which is segmenting, targeting, positioning, differentiation. The company needs to decide which customer it will serve, which will be the first 2 points, segmentation and targeting. And of course, they need to define how to serve them, which would be positioning and differentiation, to ensure high quality value. When actually this is defined, a company needs to define their marketing mix, which is a set of tactical tools that the firm blend together to create value and a wanted response, of course. The 4 P's are more product-centered, while the 4 A's are more client-centered, but both are equally as important. So on the PowerPoint, you see the 4 P's and the 4 A's, and I would also encourage you to remember them because they are quite crucial for defining a marketing strategy. So after having done all of this, the last, which is actually the most outer ring of this before seen concept, this is this ring here, involves the marketing effort, which contain actually the marketing analysis, which is the SWOT analysis, but we never really looked at it in depth. But you can see the SWOT analysis on the bottom right of the PowerPoint presentation. It's actually where we analyze our strengths and our weaknesses of our product or company in general, and then we see what opportunities and threats there are in the market that we want to serve. Also, the marketing efforts include planning, implementation, organization, and control. For control, there is actually another slide I included because it's quite difficult to control it. But nowadays we have, with digital marketing, where we will talk about it afterwards, it is easier to measure marketing efforts, especially with the marketing return on investment. And this is actually the most crucial point on these slides. So to the last one, it is like actually when we have defined like who is our target and how we want to target them, we also need to deliver it somehow. And delivering is a crucial point because it's what we finally want to do. And you have to remember that there is that for delivery, it is very important to partner. And there are actually two different systems. One that which is the value delivery system, which includes actually everyone in the market system to cooperate with one another, which is externals as well as well internals as the companies. And then there is the value chain, which is just a link inside the companies between the different departments. So remember, in order to deliver value, we need to partner together. So because we are better together, as you can see on the PowerPoint. So this is end of chapter 4. I think there was one question. I'm not sure. So I guess not. So we can move on further to chapter 4. So, okay, after analyzing the buying behaviors of customers and also looking at the strategies involved in the company, we look at the microenvironment and also its forces. The microenvironment are actually all the actors close to the company, such as the company itself, suppliers, intermediaries, customers, competitors. And you have just to remember that here we have actually a direct effect onto these different actors, and also they have a direct effect on our business. So these named actors in the microenvironment, they create forces, the so-called microforces, which affect directly the company's ability to develop and maintain successful transaction and relationships. However, these forces we can also directly influence. That's a very crucial characteristic of microforces, which also differentiates them from macroforces, which we look at just right afterwards. So, just so that you know, the 6 major actors in this environment, and therefore the ones creating the main forces are company, which needs top management to create plans, etc. Then the suppliers, because actually they are an important link in the company's overall customer value delivery network, which we looked at just before. Then the marketing intermediaries, they help the company to promote, distribute its goods to the final consumer. And also the competitors, because we need to outcompete them by a good positioning and competing strategy of our own company. Then we have public groups, which is actually any group that has an actual or potential interest on the company organization, which could be financial publics, media publics, government publics, local public or general public, just as some examples. Then we have the customers, which is actually the most important actor because they are the actual target of the delivery network. I guess these are the most crucial actors. Well, these are the only actors, and I guess they're quite clear. So I will move on, because apart from the customers that I just mentioned, which are actually the most important actors, also the competitors are very important, as you may know, because we need to outcompete them. And in order to outcompete them, we have to do a competition analysis that consists of 3 points. First, we have to define the industry and the current competition. Secondly, we need to understand and evaluate the competition. And thirdly, we need to define our competitive strategy. So for the first step, which is define the industry and the current competition, we look if the competition is direct or indirect. Direct competition is when 2 or more companies offer the exact same product. as you can see, for example, Uber and Lyft, which we are kind of all familiar with, which are just transportation services of people. And indirect competition is when the product is not the same, but it actually satisfies the same needs, which, for example, here is taxi or also Uber, and public transportation, because they're not the same good, or they offer not the equal same, but in the end, they satisfy the same need of transportation. I hope this is also clear. So we go on to the second step, which is understand and evaluate the competition. Here we can look at two different approaches, either at a qualitative or a quantitative approach. The two approaches are based on different aims and also different ways to achieve. The qualitative approach is based on a rather observational descriptive approach, while the quantitative is based on analyzing numerical data. And in order to analyze numerical data, we have some different calculations that you all should remember for the exam, because they're quite important, as for example, the ADR, the occupancy in percentage, or just the occupancy in general, the RevPAR, but also the AMS and the FMS are quite important to analyze. And some additional performance indicators would be just the change from this year to the previous year, and also the index. So just remember, there are not many calculations, but there will be some in the final exam. And this slide will actually include all of them. So for the final step of the competitive analysis, we need to define the competitive strategy to conquer the market. For this, we can actually take the Porter's generic strategy matrix. This matrix is based on the two main criteria to either compete with cost or to compete with differentiation. And if the target is only a segment or a wider range. For the cost, it is the aim to have the lowest cost, and therefore to be able to have lower prices. And for differentiation, it is actually the aim just to be unique and therefore desirable for everyone, and actually to stand out. Again, a matrix to remember, but it's open book. You can always have a look at it again. So that was actually chapter 4. I hope it was understandable, the microenvironment. So I guess we can move on to a related topic, which is the macro environment. So, but before actually analyzing the macro environment, we need just to define a market, because that's also quite important for our final exam. Well, a market is a set of actual and potential buyers of a product or service. And these buyers share a particular need or want. And we need to analyze actually the market in order to see all the opportunities and threats, and therefore to know how to react to them. As for example, if we see there are a lot of potential customers, we see that we only need to convince them to buy our product. This can be done by advertising and promotion. However, if we need to actually steal customers, we have to act differently. So, in order to properly analyze a market and therefore adjust the marketing strategy, one has to analyze the three basic metrics of a market, which is the current market, the market share, and the future demand. Without proper analyzing of these three metrics, we are unable to estimate our performance and also actually our overall strategy. Because we need to see the current market, but we also need to see mostly into the future to know how it might turn out in the end. So, after analyzing the market and defining the market, we will go into the macro environment. The macro environment has actually a quite huge impact on the future of our business. Because so the macro environment are actually all the other operators in the larger environment that are main sources of opportunities and threats. There are actually 6 major forces which we can influence, which we cannot influence directly actually. The 6 different forces you will see also on my slides. I won't go over into them all in detail, but actually they are demographic, economic, natural, technological, political, and cultural forces. I guess they're quite easy to understand, and therefore I will just leave them like this, and you will always have the time to look at them before the exam. And also you will have them during the exam. But if you have questions, let me know, and we will have a look at them. So this will actually already conclude our chapter about the macro environment. And I guess we can move on to chapter 6, which is actually about marketing research and market research in general. Yeah, I guess it's clear. So marketing research. Marketing research is done in order to understand what the market actually demands. It is collecting huge amount of information to gain unique customer insights, which is the basis of creating customer value, engagement, and relationships. So it is basically the systematic design, collection, analysis, and reporting of data relevant to a specific marketing concept. The data, however, needs to follow 4 main criteria. Namely, it has to be correct, objective, clear, and of course on time. These are the 4 main criteria that we always have to follow. In general, the marketing research consists of 4 major steps, which you can see on the PowerPoint. First, it is defining the problem and the research objective. Afterwards, we need to develop a research plan for the collection of information. Thirdly, implementing the plan, that means collecting and analyzing data. And lastly, interpreting the findings and also reporting them to our chef. So as for this first step, we will go over all of the steps right now. And I will start, of course, with the first one. As for the first step, defining the problem and objectives. So first we need to make a hypothesis, which is actually a research question, which we want to answer with yes or no. And we need to, with this question, we also want to identify the problem that we face. Then for this hypothesis, we need to choose a type of research, which can be either one of 3, which could be exploratory, descriptive, or casual. I won't go into each of them, but if you don't know what they are, I can explain it, of course. But then after we have actually defined the hypothesis, we can go on to the second step, which is actually making a plan. Basically, the research plan outlines the problem we want to solve. The research objective, which is the hypothesis that we created, and the type of research that we just discussed before. Then it also contains information needed and how to get it, which will be either primary or secondary data, which can be qualitative or quantitative data. And also it includes how the results will help the decision making and also tells us what we need to report to our chef. And finally, what the plan also includes is the budget. So, as I said, marketing plan just outlines what it contains. Then the third step is actually implementing the plan we just defined. This involves collecting, processing, and analyzing of the information. Data collection can be carried out by the company's marketing research staff or also other firms. Researchers should watch closely to make sure that the plan is implemented correctly. Concerning as well the collection of data, you can use secondary data, which is information that already exists somewhere and that has been collected for probably another purpose. Or you can also use primary data, which is information collected for exactly our purpose. However, secondary data is more affordable because no research has to be done to collect it right away. And also you have it much faster, and it provides you also with information that otherwise you probably wouldn't have. However, secondary data just gives a good basis, but primary research still has to be done because it's mostly not reliable, maybe not even precise, and probably also not up to date, which is actually against the 4 criteria that I mentioned in the beginning before. So therefore, we need to do research for primary data anyway. And the collection of this data can focus on 2 different approaches, which is qualitative or the quantitative approach. It is different from the competitive analysis, but it's still quite the same. It's different, but the same actually, because the qualitative is again mostly about observation, while quantitative is again just numerical numbers and analysis of them. These 2 different approaches are actually just basic descriptions on what the research can focus on. And as I said, that these are just a process, it's not the approaches, and they are not actually the real research forms. We have many other research forms, such as observational research, ethnographically research, survey research, experimental research, focus group interviewing, online marketing research, and behavioral targeting, or sampling plans. And these are all research forms that will help us to collect primary data. So after all these, after this third step, which is actually implementing the plan, we can go over to the 4th step to interpreting and reporting the findings. So actually the researcher must interpret these findings and draw conclusions and report them to management. These conclusions shouldn't be complicated numbers. The researcher should present important findings and insights in a rather easy, understandable way in order for the management to process them and also understand them quite quickly. Actually, these were all the steps of the marketing research. And this whole process of a marketing research is used in a major concept that we looked at for information research. And this concept is called the marketing information system, because the MIS lays out a good structure how to develop the needed information and analyze them. And this is done by people and procedures that focus on assessing information needs and developing the needed information. and then in the end also help decision makers to create valuable customer insights. And as you can see, marketing research is in the core of this MIS system. And the core is actually about developing information. The marketing research is together in the core with internal databases and also the marketing intelligence, which are all responsible for developing the needed information. So that was actually a quite intense and loaded part of the presentation, and I hope you understood market research, which helps us to find customer value. And if there are any questions, just type them. Otherwise, I will move forward to chapter 7. So since there is nothing, I guess I can just move forward. So now, after we analyze the market, identify how to create customer value, and we also know actually what consumers demand after marketing research, we need to define a strategy to know who exactly we want to serve and how we want to attract them and stand out. That's why we create a customer value-driven marketing strategy that consists of 4 major points, namely segmentation, targeting, differentiation, and positioning. Segmentation and targeting focus on the question who to serve, while differentiation and positioning identifies what value we want to serve. We will go through them now. As for segmentation, it is dividing actually the market into distinct groups of buyers who have different needs, characteristics, or behaviors, and who might require separate marketing strategies or mixes. A market can actually segment the market with 4 major criteria, namely geographical, socio-demographical, psychographical, or behavioral. I actually think these 4 criteria are quite clear. Therefore, I won't describe each of them in detail, but if you have questions, just type them and we can go over them. So actually, marketers mostly use a combination of different segmentation criteria to identify a group even better. However, more is not always better, and in the end, it should be effective segmentation rather than just be very detailed. And effective segmentation actually needs to go through these criteria. The segment should be measurable, it should be accessible, substantial, differentiable, and actionable. I also think these criteria are quite clear, so we can just move on to the next step. So over to targeting. So the firm has to evaluate which of the identified segments that we just discussed before has actually the best opportunities when evaluating, and also the best basis for good serving. When evaluating the segment as a firm, we will look actually at 2 major factors. First, the segment size and the growth, and secondly, the connection of the segment to the company's mission, so that the segment actually is aligned with what the company also wants to embody. When the target has been identified, the marketers will create a persona of this target segment. It is the human representation of your segment. But also for your exam, remember when you have to do this, like identify a persona, you need to be very precise and specific. As for example, for the age, you need to say exactly which age group it is, or just really the number. So it's, for example, he is 30 years old, and not it's he is in his 30s. Remember this, be precise when describing your persona. So when deciding on a target segment, also the strategy how to create the relationship with the target market is important. And there you have 4 major strategies to create a good relationship, which you can see on the right side of the presentation. These 4 strategies are actually undifferentiated marketing, which can also be seen as mass marketing. Then we have differentiated marketing, which is segmented marketing, concentrated marketing, also called niche marketing, or even though micro marketing, which includes local or individual marketing. For all these different strategies, we can actually see that we move from our target segment always into a smaller one. So first we have the big one, and then we always move to smaller ones, because either we cannot afford to, and with our production factors, to actually target all of them, or we also don't have the means to do it. But choosing the right strategy really depends on the resources you have. Because when resources are limited, then concentrated marketing makes the most sense. But it also depends on the degree of production variability. For example, undifferentiated marketing is suited for uniform products, such as, for example, steel, or let's say a fruit, for example, a banana. But products that can vary in design, for example, a phone or a camera, are better in differentiated or concentration. Always consider the strategies of the opponents is also quite crucial, because if your opponent sets on differentiated marketing strategy, you will lose definitely when you use the undifferentiated ones and the mass marketing. So that's all I had to say about targeting. I hope it's quite clear. If there are no questions, I will move forward to the next step, which will be differentiation. So the next 2 steps are concerning the decision on value proposition, because the company must know how it will create differentiated value from the segment, and what position also it wants to occupy in the mind of the people. Since consumers have such a wide range of choices, the company needs to have a differentiation and a positioning strategy to stand out. However, there will always be many different companies that will go after the same position. But then each will have to find a way to set itself apart from others. And this is where differentiation comes in place. Differentiation is actually the identification of the differences between the competitors. And the objective is to be perceived superior by the customers and gain competitive advantage by offering something unique. In order to see where differentiation takes place, a company has to stand out in its USP. As you might remember, USP stands for unique selling proposition. These are the elements which you can compare to others. They actually tell us how we are unique and therefore where we can differentiate. We also heard about the UVP, which are the unique selling, unique value proposition, which focus more in how customers will live, lives will be improved by working with our product, with our business, or just consuming our product. It tells what the company is and how it solves the problem and the need of the different customers. But we will look at this afterwards when you look at the lettering technique. So for the USPs, which are important for differentiation, we can differentiate actually at product level, service level, channel and distribution level, people level, and image level. I think also you know all of these different levels and what they contain. Therefore, I won't go into detail with them. However, a company needs to decide how many differences to promote and which one, of course. And he can choose on all of these 5 levels. There are actually different opinions how many to promote. Before, people would say that we should only just promote one, but nowadays it is important to mix them together and really stand out, because now in our mass market, where all the products are quite similar, we need to make combinations to really stand out. Not as like in the past, where we would be already unique with just our product or even our packaging. But in order to know how to really differentiate from the others, also differentiation has to go through 7 criteria, just as segmentation. But the criteria for differentiation would be the importance. So we really need to identify that our differentiation delivers a higher value than the competitor's one. Also, the differentiation should be distinctive in order to show that we really don't sell the same as the competitor. It should also be superior. It should be communicable. That means that it needs to be simple to explain to the customers why we are different. It needs to be preemptive. That means actually that it's not easy to copy. The difference should be affordable, so that buyers can afford to pay for the difference. And also the difference should be profitable, so a real profit generator. These are the 7 criteria that are very important. I will just repeat them. Important, distinctive, superior, communicable, preemptive, affordable, and profitable. Quite important to know. So, but after defining all these differentiation points of the actual attributes, the company also needs to point out the final benefits which involve in the customer experience, etc., of the product, and therefore we need to point out the UVP that I just mentioned before, the unique value proposition. And this is then done by the lettering technique, which you can see on the right side of the PowerPoint. During the lettering technique, you actually go from the attribute, which are the tangible elements of the product, to the product benefits, which say why it is important, why the product is important to the customers, and also the functional benefit that the customers will experience while consuming our product and not the one of our competitors. Therefore, we can just say that the lettering technique is actually just moving from the UPS, the unique USP, the unique selling proposition, to the UVP, the unique value proposition. So by doing this whole process of differentiation, the company also kind of wants to influence the final positioning, which will move us to the last step of a value-driven marketing strategy, which is positioning. However, a company will never be able to define a positioning completely, but just influence them, because the final positioning is only in the minds of the customer, something very important to remember. we can only influence them but never define it. However, we can define how we want to be perceived by the customers, and also then how they should actually position ourselves, our company. And this can be done, for example, by our positioning statement, which then actually also defines our positioning strategy. I think the positioning statement is quite clear. You can see it on the PowerPoint presentation, how it is built, and also the main characteristics of it. And therefore, I won't go into further detail. But of course, if you have questions, always ask, and always happy to answer. And once the company has actually chosen a positioning through the positioning statement, the company must also take all the steps to deliver and communicate their desired. It's just a desired position. It's not always the one that they also will achieve in the end, but they have to communicate their desired position to the target consumers. And this can be actually quite difficult and costly if you want to actually achieve a positioning that shows high quality, but also is a quite expensive product. But just remember, they have to really want to communicate their desired positioning in order to also achieve their goal. So that was actually everything about the strategy. So, well, one part of the strategy, of course, it was just involved the different sections from segmentation, targeting, differentiation, and positioning. And I guess there are no questions. Therefore, we will move forward to chapter 8, which will include marketing mix and the product and service strategy. So again, the marketing mix, we already saw this picture before, but we will go into detail now. So the marketing mix are actually all operational and tactical marketing tools, and we need to combine them to create customer value and actually an integrated marketing program. The traditional marketing mix first just included the 4 Ps, which are product, price, place, and promotion. But these traditional 4 Ps are rather product-centered, and in order to be more up-to-date, marketers also have invented the 4 As, which are actually the questions that we should ask ourselves when we want to put a new product onto the market. And these 4 As, they are more customer-centered, while the 4 Ps are more product-centered, as I said already. And I guess the marketing mix is quite easy to understand. There's not much about it. It's just quite important when you want to do a marketing strategy. So I would now move forward to product strategies, because I think it's quite clear. And so, yeah, no questions. Therefore, let's move over to the product strategy. So what is a product? A product is actually anything that can be offered to a market for attention, acquisition, use, or consumption that might satisfy a want or even a need. Products are key elements in a market offering. A product can be a good, which is tangible, which is considered tangible actually, or a service, which is mostly considered not tangible. However, the concept that you can see on the PowerPoint is more applicable for goods than services, but we will look at service strategies just right afterwards. So let's first go into product. In order to plan a product and create something that will create customer value, because as you can see from the picture, customer value is in the center of the whole concept of a product. A planner needs to plan on 3 different levels of a product, because each level adds more customer value. Something to remember. Each level adds more customer value. A product actually is a complex bundle of benefits that satisfy the needs of the customers, and marketers must identify the core customer value and then develop out of this customer value, or basically the need, a product. And then from this product, you need to find ways to augment it. So just let's go over the different levels. The first level, of course, is the core, and the core level, which is the basic level, and it defines what the buyer is really buying. Well, what need actually. Then the second level would be turning this core level, the need, the benefit, or whatever, into an actual product with features, design, quality level, etc. And then for the third level, this would be the augmented product. There are actually all the additional customer services and benefits that are all included into the product, and which will also help to differentiate from your competitors. I guess this concept of 3 levels of a product are quite clear. Therefore, we can move forward to different types of consumer products. In products, you have actually 2 big classes of products, either consumer products, or industrial products. However, we didn't really look at industrial products because they are not the center of attention for us, I guess. But you can still see a small definition on the top right. But let's focus on consumer products, where we have actually 4 subgroups, namely the convenience products, the shopping products, the specialty products, and the unsold products. I guess also these 4 categories are actually quite clear and very easy to understand. Very sorry for the typo in the convenient product, but that's just how it is. I'm sorry. But then we can actually move forward to product decisions. Because when having a product on the market, marketers need to make decisions in order to keep up with the vital environment of the market. And there are actually 3 different levels where marketer can do decisions. And there's, for example, the individual product decisions, which will focus on just the product itself. And it includes product attributes, branding, packaging, labeling, logos, product support, and services. This is just for one simple product. Apart from that, also decision on a whole product line can be made. These 2 things will include product line filling and product line stretching. I guess also this is quite clear, but if you have questions, you can ask me. And then we also have product mix decisions. An organization with several product lines has a product mix. Just so that you know that a product mix is just several product lines in the company. And a company's product mix has 4 important dimensions, which are width, length, depth, and consistency, where the company is able to make their decision on it. I also think the slide is quite clear, and I guess you all have summaries and more definitions of the different parts. Therefore, I will move on to the service, but just let me know. But as I mentioned, in hospitality, or I'm not sure if I even mentioned it, but in hospitality, we mostly focus on this because what we offer in hospitality is not really a product. Well, it is a product, but it's not a good, and it's more of a service. I think you can all agree on that because services are intangible products. They include everything from personal services like medical care and spa treatments to the rental of vehicles and spaces, but as well to experiences in hotels and restaurants. And so, actually, what we should focus on. And as I said, this model is similar to the product one because, again, service has three different levels, which are nearly equal to the one of the product. And again, in the core, there is the value of the customer that we actually want to create a service for. As for the core, it is again what the customer is really buying, so which service he really wants in order to stimulate his need. Then the second layer would be the actual service that we would provide, which would include facility service, which are necessary to deliver the benefit, or support services as, for example, sea view, Wi-Fi, or parking. On the third level, there is the augmented service, which includes all additional services and benefits that will then, in the end, make us stand out from the others and also contribute to the customer value. However, there's something else that's very different from a service and a good, because a service has 4 special characteristics that differentiate service marketing from product marketing. And a company must actually consider all 4 special service characteristic when designing marketing programs. These 4 different characteristics are intangibility, inseparability, variability, and perishability. Again, on the slides, you see all the definitions, and I guess they're quite clear. So we can move actually forward to better understand the difference between a service and a good. And apart from just these 4 special characteristics, also why good marketing or product marketing is so much different than service marketing. So on this slide, you have the characteristics that lead us to the differences between the good and the service. I will give you some time to read them through, and I would just take a sip of water, and then I will really move on. So you might have not been able to read everything through, but I guess they're quite clear and no question will occur here, and you will have them, the slides also during your exam. Therefore, I would really like to move on to deliver to the service profit chain, which is actually delivering a service to the final customer. And also it shows that delivering a service is also quite a bit different than delivering a good. The chain here links service firms, or actually this whole concept shows us which steps service marketing has to go through and what all has to be included in order to deliver a service from the beginning till the end customer. Effective services focus actually on customers and employees in general, because employees are an essential part in service marketing because they are actually in the end the ones to deliver the service. And therefore, in this case of service marketing, one cannot forget employees. Now, that's, for example, in some good product marketing, employees didn't have to be trained as much as in service marketing. But I guess this service profit chain is quite understandable, and therefore I would just move on to the triangle of service marketing, which shows us again the different parts that are included in service marketing. Because service marketing is also quite complex, as we can see in this model. When delivering a service, there are 3 types of marketing that we have that has to be done, where especially the internal marketing is crucial, which is the one that I just explained you of training the employees because they are crucial to delivering the service. Internal marketing is actually company trains, recruits employees to create the value. External would be the companies make the offer and the promise by implementing the 4 Ps. And then we have interactive marketing, where actually there is the employees and the customers, and the employees then finally deliver their service. So I hope that's all clear. It's quite an interesting topic, the difference between service and product marketing, and I guess it's also quite easy to understand. Therefore, I would move on to the second to last, but a really big chapter, which is about integrated marketing communication. I hope you're still willing to learn about it and are all up to date with everything. So I would just start. Well, in order to build customer relationships, one needs more than just a good marketing mix. Companies must really engage with customers and communicate their value proposition, because what is not communicated to the customers will be left out and forgotten, and also people won't react to it. Therefore, we need to create an integrated communication strategy, which is a specific blend of promotional tools that the company uses to persuasively communicate customer value and build customer relationships. Since nowadays there are many communication channels, and also marketing content comes from many different parts of the companies, we need to integrate 5 major marketing communication tools into an integrated communication strategy. So just let you know, on the slide there is the summary of what I just said. It's just something that I really want to enhance here, that integrated marketing communication is really the blend and integration of the different promotional tools that we will just have a look right afterwards, and is considered the promotion mix. So now I think we need to know how to create a marketing communication strategy. So this also goes through 6 different steps, which would be first identifying the target audience, because the target audience will heavily affect the communicator's decisions on what will be said, how it will be said, when it will be said, and where it will be said, and who will say it. Therefore, identifying the target audience is very crucial to do it first, because it will affect everything you do after. Secondly, determine the communication objective and determine the desired response, which is probably the purchase response, but we also need to see the different stages of the buying readiness stages that probably all of us know after we have done the communication task. therefore I didn't include it on my slides, but I guess we all have our definitions on the slides of our teacher. But just consider in the second step, we also have to include the bioreadiness stages, because the different responses vary from each stage, because we want to trigger something else in each stage. Then the third step is designing a message. Having designed the defined desired response of the audience in step 2, we also need to settle on a message. And developing an effective message actually consists of 3 different points, which includes message content. So the content needs to be accurate and correct and also precise. Then also the structure of the message, which we didn't really have a look at it, and therefore I wouldn't go into detail here. And also the third, which is the message format, which we also didn't really look at it. But just remember that effective messages have 3 main points, which is content, structure, and format. Then the fourth point is actually choosing communication channels and media. There we can choose between 2 different major communication channels, which is the personal communication channels, which is channels through which 2 or more people communicate directly with each other. This could be, for example, face-to-face, or also via phone or email. Or we have the non-personal communication channels, which is media that carry messages without personal contact or feedback, including major media or, for example, events. Then the fifth step would be selecting the message source, because the message's impact also depends on how the target audience views the communicator. Messages delivered by highly credible or popular sources are more persuasive than if they're just torn from something. As for example, a good source may be from celebrities, scientists, or doctors, because they're quite considered as desirable, and therefore we would believe them a little bit more than somebody else, and also they're quite popular, concerning celebrities. Then for the 6th step, it's actually about collecting feedback. The communicator must research its effect on the target audience, and this would be the feedback. He will develop such a strategy he will continue this approach if the feedback is positive, but he will change it, of course, if the feedback is negative. And that's actually the most crucial point about collecting feedback. And also feedback is also very important, because it will tell you if your promotional tool to use is the right one or if it's not. And for collecting feedback, there is, again, something that we mentioned before in the return on marketing investment. The ROI is quite crucial in this point. But now we know how to create a marketing communication strategy. We also need to look at the promotional mix to know which tools we can actually use. And the first and also quite important tool would be advertising. So advertising is actually any paid form of non-personal presentation and promotion of ideas, goods, and services by an identified sponsor. Advertising can reach masses of geographically wide distant buyers at a low cost per exposure. It enables the seller to repeat a message many times. And also advertising is very expressive. It allows the company to dramatize its product through artful visuals, prints, sounds, etc. And also it helps to create a long-term image, which is very important to stay in the heads of people. When developing an advertising strategy, you have again to go over some steps, which are actually four. For the first, which is define the objective, a specific communication task has to be identified to be accomplished within a specific target period and also for a specific target audience. Therefore, defining a communication task and the objectives is quite specific and has to be very goal-oriented, if you can say it like that. Objectives also have actually three major types. We have namely persuasive, reminder, and informative objectives. And this will then in the end be quite important for what actually how your advertising program will look like, because it will look different if you want to persuade, remind, or inform a customer about your products. The second step in an advertising strategy would include the budget. A brand's advertising budget often depends on its stage in the product life cycle and also on the brand name, something that is very important to remember. The budget will vary throughout the product life cycle and the brand. Also about the notoriety of your brand name. When choosing a budget, you can actually follow three main strategies, which you can see on my PowerPoint. They are actually quite self-explanatory. Therefore, I will move to the third step, which is actually about the strategy. So thirdly, it is time to make the advertising strategy. The strategy by which the company actually accomplishes its advertising objectives. It consists of two major elements. First, creating an advertising message and selecting advertising media. No matter how big the budget is, advertising can succeed only if it engages with customers and communicates really well what you want to deliver. Good advertising messages and content are especially important, which you can see on the left side of the PowerPoint. A good message would actually has to be analyzed before, because you need to know what to say, so your content, then how to say it, and who says it. As we looked at before, when trying to create an integrated marketing strategy, it's very important that your message is very well structured, and also that the source is very important. And this is reflected in advertising as well, and also in all the other promotional tools that we'll look at afterwards. Then when you want to define the actual channel and the right media where you want to put in your advertising campaign, there are actually 4 steps to determine which is the right media. First is determine reach, frequency, impact, and engagement. Secondly, you have to choose among major media types. Thirdly, select specific media vehicles. And fourth, you need to choose the media timing. These 4 points are very crucial in order to define which media type you want. the marketer actually needs to choose the right media type. You can see the major ones on the slides with all the benefits and their limitation. Then the media planner must also choose the best media vehicle, which is actually a specific media within a general media type. Media planners must also consider the cost of producing ads for different media and media types, because all of the different vehicles have different costs, as you as you already probably figured out. And this would actually be the third step of implementing or creating the actual advertising strategy. For the fourth step, it's all about just the evaluation, which is mostly focused on effectiveness and therefore the return on investment that we just talked before. Because advertising communication effectiveness would actually determine how well you communicated your message, which could be determined by a pre-test and afterwards also a post-test after the ad to see what is still in the mind of the people and what was lost. Therefore, you can adapt to it. And the ROI, the return on investment, is actually quite difficult to measure. But now with our online presence, it got easier, and now we can actually really see an immediate response after seeing an ad if they click onto our website or not. But this will be afterwards a topic in digital marketing. So let's go over to the second promotional tool. I will now be a little bit more superficial because we don't have so much time left, and I think you're tired as well. And therefore we go over the second one just very shortly. So it is also a part of the communication strategy. The second promotional tool, which is PR or public relations. It aims to promote the brand, good, or the service for different public groups and therefore change the attitude towards them. And the objectives actually you can see on the PowerPoint and also their advantages. Therefore, I wouldn't go too much into detail in them because they're quite easy to understand. But however, one need to decide on the main activities in order to create a good PR campaign. You need to pick the best ones for your project because it will always depend on your situation which one is the best to choose. The main activities you can also see on the PowerPoint, which will be press relations, product and brand publicity, public affairs, lobbying, and investor relations. If you have any question concerning one of the activities, please write them in the chat and I will answer them gladly afterwards. Then, because we went through PR quite fast, we will go over to the third promotional tool, which is direct and digital marketing. It is actually a channel without intermediaries and direct engagement with the target segment to obtain an immediate response. All this connected to the now fast-growing form of digital marketing. Direct marketing has undergone a dramatic transformation from early marketing to now. A channel now that has no intermediaries, something that I really want to point out, that direct marketing has no intermediaries and is really direct. Digital and social marketing, as you can see, is the fastest growing form of direct marketing at the moment. As for digital marketing, it has many benefits, as you can see on this side. As for example, it is very efficient and speedy. And also one thing that is really important now that I mentioned a lot is that you can keep track of the preferences of people. and also it allows real-time marketing and therefore is very flexible from time to time. About all the benefits you can see on the slides. So when doing digital marketing, you also have to define what content to use. You develop content that satisfy the customers. You need to make it in relation to the stages in the people of the people in which they are in, as for example, if they are in awareness or if they are in knowledge or conviction. And here one can decide on 4 major types of content, namely entertaining, educating, persuading, or converting, as you can also see on the slides. Also, when talking about digital media marketing, there are actually 3 different types of online media that we use, which for one is earned media, then we have own media and paid media. Also, again, all definitions on the slide, and I guess they're quite self-explaining. Then for something that might be a little bit more complicating, which is concerning also online marketing, we have to include search engine marketing, or CEM, because who does not search in search engines such as Google or Bing daily? This type of marketing focuses on the placement of your company's website ad, link, or whatever on the search result page, which is called CERP, something to remember. So it's actually just where your website, the link to your website or the link to your ad or whatever you want to promote is located onto this search result page. And here again, we have 2 different approaches. You can either have the SEO, not CEO, SEO, where you don't pay the search engine creator to rank you, but you have to earn your ranking by getting clicked and being viewed, etc., which will then take your rating up and also your ranking up, and then you will be in a better position on the CERP. But this is takes a long time, but it will then in the end be considered to earned media. However, you can also decide to pay, for example, let's say Google, to put you into a high rank in the search result page, and so you get seen very fast by others. But this will then be considered paid media. So apart from search engine, we also have social media. Sorry, I'm so sorry. That plays a huge role in our everyday life, and therefore marketing will also be very present on social media platforms such as Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, etc., because they are also quite lucrative. As for this kind of marketing, there are 4 different approaches how to capture the audience, which would be social community, social publishing, social commerce, and social media entertainment. And again, all definitions are on the screen. And finally, for the last digital marketing approach, there is mobile marketing, because now people have phones, and therefore most people are daily on their phones checking something, and therefore also here marketing managers need to be present, and 4 major criteria for mobile marketing is really be there, because we need to be visible also on your phone when you're looking for something like website, or we need to also create an app. Then the second criteria will be we should be valuable, that we really help the people to solve their problem and also strengthen our awareness and the benefits. And the last one would be that we should be quick, because in order to be visible and also that people to like us, our app or our website should be really fast to load on the phone, because otherwise they will click us away and we lost the game. So actually now we are on our last chapter finally, which is about the branding and the brand. So first I will start with, what is a brand? Well, a brand is actually everything that a product or a service means to a customer. It also includes the concept of experience. Therefore, it's actually everything that a customer associates with the brand, where we can also kind of use the concept of an iceberg that we talked about it, because a brand is not just the visual, the fact actually which contains the product, features, quality, design, but there is so much more to it, which includes the meta message, which are all the emotion, associations, the image, and the mental picture of the brand. Just imagine the brand as an iceberg, and the visible and the not visible part. It's quite easy to understand from then. From the brand point of view, a brand consists of two main parts: the brand equity and the brand value. The brand equity is the differential effect that knowing the brand name has on customer responses to the product and its marketing. It is the measure of brand ability to capture customer preferences and loyalty, or actually the value of customer relations the brand creates. So if you have high brand equity and you want to implement a new strategy or even a new product, or even raising your prices, then like your customers won't lose interest in you, because you have good brand equity and they will stay with you. It's kind of like loyalty, as I said before. Then the brand value is, however, the financial worth of the brand, or actually how much one would pay for purchasing the brand right now. But the fundamental asset of a brand isn't the brand value, but mostly just the brand equity, because it's the value of customer relations that the brand creates. But then the actually main aim is to create powerful brands, and this goes through 4 steps, which would first be the brand positioning, which has a 3 different level: a low level, which is actually just the attributes. Then also a brand can position it on the second level, where it associates its name with the desirable benefits. So what actually the attributes will give the customer as an emotional benefit. But in order to create real strong brands, brands must go beyond attributes or benefits, and they need to position on strong beliefs and values, and they engage with customers on a deep and emotional level. Then the second step would be the selection of the name, where we have many different criteria that a name should fulfill, which would include that the name should enhance actually the benefit and the qualities. Then it also should be easy to pronounce. The brand name should be distinctive. It also should be extendable, so that if you have a new product, you can use it as well for this. The name should translate easy into other languages. And it also should be able to be protected legally, so that no other has already registered your name. And then when you have chosen your name, you immediately have to protect it in order to keep your brand name and build a strong brand. Then thirdly, we have the brand sponsorship, where we have 4 different ways: the manufacturer of a brand or the national brand, we have private brand or store brand, licensing, or co-branding. I think they're quite clear. But if you have questions, again, just ask. Then I will go on to the final step, which is very important, which is brand development. Again, we have a matrix here. I will show you right now. And this matrix, we have actually two main criteria, namely brand name and product category, which we will then define in existing and new. When applying this, we split the matrix into 4 quadrants, namely line extension, multi-brand, brand extension, and new brands. It's also a quite important matrix to remember. Again, on the slides you have actually a quite good summary of everything, and I would encourage you to look at it deeply, because detailed explanation of everything would take too long, and I hope it's quite clear. But again, come back to me if you have questions. Then, apart from creating strong brand, we also want to create brand identity. And to create brand identity, we should have distinguishable brand elements, such as the one you can see on the left side, which include name, slogan, logo, typeface, design, packaging, character, jingle, and URLs. These are very important brand elements in order to create brand identity. And all of these elements actually also need to be controlled by the criteria that you can see on the right. And I think these criteria are quite self-explanatory. Therefore, I won't go into further detail. Just remember, these brand elements need to be aligned with all with these criteria on the right side. Then we are also at the final part of brands, which is about managing brands. Well, companies must manage your brand carefully, because otherwise it could create confusion, and also they need to control them in order to sustain their positioning in the minds of their customers. And in this, actually, the branding prism or Prisma, you see the 6 major tools to analyze a brand, because it takes into account all the elements of brand identity as well, which is, for example, physique, that determines how the brand is defined and manifests. This includes, for example, packaging and colors and the logo. Then we also have the relationship. That's the nature of the relationship between the brand and the consumers, which also includes all the emotional connection to the benefit. Then we have reflection. It tells us how the brand portrays its target audience. It's actually really based on stereotypical beliefs or attributes that are mostly in ads that we see. Then we have the self-image, which is how customers see themselves in the brand. We have the culture, that is set of the values of the foundation of the brand. And the personality, which are the traits of the brand in the eyes of the customers. And we always need to look at all these 6 traits, at all these 6 key elements in order to manage our brands correctly and maintain their structure. On the next slide, you actually have a good example of Dove that would tell you everything about it and how it would be. And they always try to maintain all of these 6 key elements in order to sustain their brand identity. So I guess that's it. I'm so happy that you spent this recap session with me, and I hope you learned something, and I wish you all the best. If you have questions, you can ask them now, or you can also contact me over mail. I think you know my name by now.
But I just want to tell you that I think you did a really, really great job, and thank you so much. You still took the time to just really go over everything clearly and just explain the whole thing. I really appreciate that. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your feedback.
Have a good day, Timo. I'm gonna go now. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Goodbye. Have a nice day.
Thank you, Timo.
Well then, thank you very much. So I think when that there are no questions, I wish you all the best for your finals and hopefully see you around campus sometimes. And I will be very happy to meet all of you one day. Take care and good luck. I'm sure you will do great.